Hey, we're back. I've got to set up. I'm going to try not to gush as I went into the break because Kyla Scanlon, who I'm going to go ahead and let her talk about herself for a minute when we bring her on here. But she is different in so many ways from anyone else we've ever had on the show. I'm going to go through a list of these, but here's how she's most different in terms of guests we've had on the show. My partner in the PureXposure Media Group, Nicole, is actually watching and listening. Biggest Kyla Scanlon fan out there. So Kyla, can you just take a few minutes and tell people what you do? And I'm going to go over the 46 different ways you're different than a normal guest on this show, but you're also the same. Good to have you, Kyla.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. So I would describe myself as a financial content creator. So I make daily market updates on TikTok, as well as I have a YouTube channel and a Substack where I'll post different thought pieces as well as weekly market updates there. And I also work at On Deck, which is a tech startup, and work on investment education there as well.
So you're not the first female on the show. We are not misogynists here, but you're probably the youngest guest we've had. You're definitely younger than Jim Iorio. God, is he getting old quick? But you're also going to be one of the first people to ever talk about Snap on this show. You're going to definitely be the first person to talk about roadblocks. You're the first TikTok content creator on this show. Probably, I said the youngest already. So let's just kind of go into your investment thesis, because one of the things I like about you the most is you do sort of a new school form of analysis in terms of the content that you create, but your view of markets is almost Buffett-esque. It's very long-term. It's very, correct me if I'm wrong when I say value-oriented. You don't want to overpay for something, and you try to look for something that's going to happen over, say, the next 5 to 20 years, rather than our average hold time, for example, in the stock think tank's 25 days. That's not something you do. So let's talk about sort of your investment thesis before we go into the actual stocks you like.
Yeah, so I would say my thesis is pretty focused on the creator economy right now. So trying to position for companies that I think are going to be a part of this next iteration of the internet. Um, I've never compared my style to Warren Buffett. I think he has actually like a very unique style that I don't know if I'd want to replicate, because I think he invests in a lot of boring companies, and that's great, right? For like, cash flow, profitability, et cetera. But I would think that some of my stuff is more like, okay, how are we going to move into the future? And that's why they're longer term holds, because I don't think they're going to play out in the next like 1 to 3 years. Like this is going to be like a long-term process. So that's kind of how I think about my stuff is, who is building for creators, who is building for the next version of the economy. And that's what I choose to invest in. But I make trades, like do credit spreads against some of my positions to sort of reduce cost basis and all that stuff. So I do trade within that smaller window as well.
Okay, so I think that's an important correction you just made. It's not about necessarily companies you like don't have to be making money. You just have to see a clear path to being part of the future economy. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay,
it's nice if they make money, but it's not the most important thing.
It always helps, right? So what do you consider to be the new economy, the future? What is it? Is it all? So you use a term called Metaverse. No, that's Marvel. What do you call it? Is it what do you call it? Metaverse, Ultraverse? What is it?
Metaverse, yeah.
Okay, so the Metaverse. I think of Marvel when I think of the Metaverse. I think of Marvel movies, but so you'd use a term in conversations we've had on Twitter before about the Metaverse. And is that something that some of the pics you sent me were Facebook or Snap, Roblox? You also like Etsy. Who of those fall? First of all, what is the Metaverse and who falls into that?
Yeah, so the metaverse, I think, is like this next iteration of the internet. So this virtual physical reality, it's just sort of how we'll interact in the future. And I think that Roblox is building in that space. Like Roblox long-term plan, I think, is to like to really build out the metaverse and to really focus on that. But when I think of sort of this AR, VR, stuff that Facebook and Snapchat are doing, I think that also ties into the metaverse. So it's just thinking about how we'll interact moving forward. So not really thinking of social networks as just social networks, but also as computing platforms, because that's what the metaverse will turn them into.
Okay, so let's look specifically at Roblox. I don't know if it's up 5% because you came on the show today. I'm going to go ahead and take credit for that. But so Roblox is about 8. By the way, symbol is RBLX, and it's up about 5% right now to about 86.53 or so. Do you put out price targets, or do you have them sort of locked away? You're not ready to do that yet. What are you looking for in terms of growth on a stock like Roblox?
Yeah, so I'll do valuation models and all that stuff. but I think like I think it's tough to have price targets on like things. Like obviously like I bought it when it went public, so that's kind of like the bottom. Like if it goes really far below that number, like I'll be like, okay, maybe I should consider selling out some of it. But I don't have like an exact price target in mind. It's because they're a little bit longer term, which might be a flaw in my own process and I can work on. But yeah, I think that Roblox, they are just going to continue to grow. They came into the market a little bit hot when they went public, so I was a little bit surprised with the valuation, but they're up, like you said. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first public trades I'm seeing on the chart here, somewhere around $82, went up to what was a medium term high at about 87.48 and has surpassed that now, as we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a perspective of when we say long term, is it fair to say outside of 5 years? So you don't necessarily care. Okay, that's not going to be a fair statement. Not that you don't care about an exit price, but that I'm sorry, an entry price. But that's not really where you're focused, right? You're more focused on the long-term thesis of it.
Yeah, so I think it's just going to take them a while to play out how I think that they can do things. I think it's going to take them a while to age up their user base. I think it's going to take them a while to lean into the evolution of social. I think it's going to take them a bit to figure out sort of like how do they retain these younger users and age them up as well? How do you build for creators? So I think it's just going to take them, you know, a couple of years. And in Roblox is really interesting because they were private for such a long time. Like they took a while to go public, and they had funding all the way. But I think that they just kind of take their sweet time, and I'm willing to give them their time and to figure that stuff out.
So, for lack of a better phrase, then, what would be some of the roadblocks, in your opinion, to a company like this? Um, there was a pun in there. For a company like this to actually be able to sort of, you said age up. I assume that means somebody like me who looks really young but is a lot older. To be able to like get involved in something like this, first of all, understanding it, second of all, understanding why I want to understand it.
Yeah, exactly. Because they have like their user base is young. When they first went public, all the mainstream news sources were like, "Oh, this is just a kids game. Like this is a kids game that's going public." And so I think it's just going to take a
Yeah.
while for people to see them as like, okay, this is actually building like a computing platform. This is the next iteration of the internet. That's what Roblox is shooting for. So I think that process is just going to take a while. And also, the mainstream, the media wasn't wrong by saying like it's a kids game because a lot of their users are children. So it's just going to take a while for them to build for adult creators and to kind of create a platform for people who want to build on the internet.
All right, so I want to let people know we might actually go past 9 o'clock. It's part of the reason I said that, or there was two reasons I wanted you on the tail end of the show. Number one, you're in California, so it gave you a few more minutes of sleep. But number two, in terms of like several of the themes, you just did something that I liked about your content and what caught my eye in the first place. I follow you on Twitter, which is what it's at Kyla. Is that right?
At Kyla Scan.
At Kyla
Yeah.
Scan. Okay, so that's at Kyla Scan. Next time we have you on, we'll put it on the lower third. That's my bad. But you do a lot on TikTok, which would you say you're more recognized on TikTok than anywhere else? Because a lot of that's your TikTok content going on to Twitter. Is that right?
Yeah, so I post on TikTok almost every day, a little daily market update, and I'll do different like meme things, like skits, I guess you could call them, about the markets. So I'd say like I don't know, like following is kind of weird. So I would say, yeah, I'm probably equally as recognized on both, maybe. Yeah.
So it's another first, definitely the first TikTok creator on the show. So from that perspective of, so you did that thing. I didn't even finish my sentence. You did that thing that I like what you do. You'll take something that's probably a little more complex and you'll put it into one sentence. You did that with your inflation video, which was the first one that caught my eye. But you just said that this is a kid's game going public, which is exactly what I thought at the time. It's a kid's game going public. What do I care about this for? And then you take it to the step of the metaverse. With inflation, you said that there's inflation in things we need and there's deflation in things we want. And I have used that multiple times without crediting you, multiple times with crediting you, completely stole it from you. And this replay goes right up. So now it's out there that I stole that from you. What theme are you looking at before we go? Because I want to go into Snap next, but what theme are you looking at that you're trying to simplify in sort of your next couple of videos?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So I think with my video process, a lot of the times it's sort of whatever is happening in the news. And there's been so many crazy things like Artigos, Elon Musk tweeting, like just sort of memifying that stuff. That's been it was sort of like what I'll do, because all of that news can be really overwhelming to people. So it's like, what does that actually mean? So I think what I've been paying, there isn't anything that's top of mind at the moment. I think the inflation narrative is pretty important. We're sort of in this inflation perpetuation cycle where, we'll talk about inflation fears will rise, and then inflation basically like manifests from that, more or less. Like obviously there's real inflation, but I think that we can tend to overextend it as well. So probably doing another video on that and just talking about that.
All right, so I said I wanted to go into Snap, but I'm all over the place. In terms of inflation, Milton Friedman basically called inflation too much money chasing too few goods.
Right.
It's my theory, my stance, and we've actually talked about this on Twitter, that the more stimulus that comes out of the government, the more money there is chasing goods from fewer businesses, because about 40% of the businesses that closed during the pandemic stayed closed. Do you think there's relief to that on either side? Do you think businesses will reopen? Do you think the government needs to stop with the stimulus in order to kind of slow that flow of the growth of inflation? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, so some states are starting to pull back on unemployment benefits. So I do think we are seeing, the stimulus begin to dissipate. I think that we just have a lot of reopening demand, and a lot of that is unavoidable. I was in San Diego for the first time this past weekend, and I went to a mall, which I like never go to the mall, but there was a ton of people at the mall. Like lines were just wrapped around the stores. And JP Morgan released their credit card spending data. And I think restaurant spend is up 84% year over year, which makes sense, like base effects, right? But then 13% over the past 2 years. So like we're spending even more in restaurants than we were 2 years ago. So I think that there's just a lot of demand, and a lot of that is unavoidable as we kind of hopefully get to the other side of the pandemic.
So you're saying that sort of anecdotally you saw sort of mall shopping revenge, sort of like travel revenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think people are, going to go get new clothes because they're going out on the town. And I think that, restaurant spend is going to go up. We're going to see service spends go up. Yeah, I think that a lot of it is reopening demand.
All right, so let's talk about Snap. I think the foray back into the glasses is stupid. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Oh, wow. I mean, I think that it's pretty cool. I think that what I really like about Snapchat, and sort of, touching on my thesis for everything, is that they're building for creators. The spectacles that they have are creator only. And I think, one really cool sentence that somebody said was, the camera is the future version of the internet. So we're going to see everything through a camera, right? Like that's how it's going to be, like the AR, VR. That's how we're going to interact with the world around us, and sort of like leaning into that metaverse idea. So I think that the spectacles and the glasses are one way to do that they have.
All right, so you won't be the first person to talk about Facebook, Zillow, Etsy. Which one's your favorite of those three?
I mean, it's hard. Like Facebook is
yeah,
so
you're long term.
powerful.
You're long term. So I mean, picking a favorite one's kind of dumb of me to ask. But which one do you want to talk about first? Let's talk about Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook. I think that it's just very powerful. Like Zuck is definitely, he knows what he's doing. I thought it was interesting. So they have glasses as well, as they've been building glasses, and Hugo Barra is leaving, and he's sort of been like leading that charge. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to that project. And they've said a couple of times that, building AR VR glasses is like very difficult. So I'm not sure what will happen there. But with Facebook, like, they have Facebook shops, they have WhatsApp, they have Geo, which is an Indian telecom platform. So they have just like so much reach that it's hard to really, when they said that they were going to be a computing platform, no longer a social network, I think that's like the best example of Facebook that I could think of.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because they aged up, right? I mean, my nieces, you're in your 20s, my nieces are younger than you, and they don't go on Facebook because they're nonas on Facebook. Their grandmother's on Facebook, so they don't have any interest in being on it. Is that an example of aging up?
So I don't even know if it's an example of aging up as much as just moving into a whole new category. Like, okay. I don't think Facebook is a social network anymore. I think that they're more than that. Yeah.
Do you have a feeling toward regulation of these companies? I don't mean a personal feeling. I mean, do you think it will happen?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that I think it's interesting. I think that there is going to be somewhat of a move towards regulation, and you see it in the crypto space with the IRS coming after, taxation for cryptos. Gary Gensler of the SEC is like very interested, I think, in regulating cryptos and sort of making a name for himself. So I do think that, like, as this next administration is probably going to want to make a name and sort of regulate things around. Yeah.
All right. So let's go to Zillow. All right. Zillow is Z. I have a much more aggressive way of talking than you. You're nicer than me. I hate realtors. They drive me crazy. It seems to me to be something that should have been disrupted a long time ago, and it doesn't seem to be able to be. And Zillow is one of my favorite ideas for the eventual disruption of that. It's like the ultimate middleman business, right? And I don't know if it's because consumers of houses are lazy or if it's just that burdensome of a thing that they deserve 5% of every sale. So what's your feeling on Zillow? By the way, full disclosure, I love this. I don't own it yet, but I plan to once it gets off the bottom here and trends a little bit. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the reopening, well, more or less. It's part of like people just buying homes. Like I'm sure you've gotten like your friends have been like, oh, I'm buying a home, and like everybody is buying a home right now. So I think it's just part of that narrative. It's like everybody is trying to buy a home. It's kind of interesting because existing home sales were negative this last go around. Like the print was negative, and home prices are up 20% over year. So I don't know, like if I feel like Zillow will have room to run, but it's kind of interesting. Like I feel like we could be getting sort of at the peak of this like housing frothiness too.
So, all right. So Etsy, I made my first. I didn't buy Etsy. I made my first buy on Etsy. I actually bought a 3D file of the Hulk because I'm a Marvel guy, and Hulk's my favorite. I don't know if you can tell. I'm kind of Hulk looking, and I bought a 3D statue of Hulk that I then found a 3D printer to print. And I thought, this is so cool. I started looking for every Marvel 3D thing I could find on Etsy. And these are purchases directly on Etsy. So I should be buying this stock. Is that, again, something you feel that's new? Is this established? Is this new economy? How do you see Etsy?
Yeah, so I think Etsy it's I think it's relatively established. I think that they have room to grow. Like sort of they're a big play on the creator economy, in my opinion, as people like monetize their processes. People sell their 3D Hulks to other people. I think that that's just like a huge marketplace opportunity. And I think it's sort of interesting. Like people love going to thrift stores, they love going vintage stores. And I think Etsy is like sort of that manifestation on the internet as well, and is able to give people who have crafty skills a place to sell their goods. And so I think it's just a great way of like the physical creator economy.
So do you think they're a viable competitor for the small business to Amazon, or is that a premature statement?
Amazon is kind of like a Facebook in my mind. Like it's just tough to go up against them. Amazon might buy Etsy one day. Like I think that's probably the most viable path. I think Amazon, they're very powerful. Yeah.
Listen, we're out of time. I was super excited to have you on. You didn't disappoint. I got to give you a few minutes to tell. There's multiple places where people can find you. That's not the case with me. How can everybody find you? And by the way, again, before you say this, I highly recommend watching Kyla's content because if nothing else, it's fun and it's funny. And you might actually pick something up that seemed like a confusing concept to you before that she makes very simple to understand. So where can people find you, Kyla?
Yeah, so I'm on TikTok at ky.now, so ky.now. And then I'm on Twitter at Kyla Scan, so Kyla, my first name, and then Scan, SCAN. And then I'm also on YouTube, just Kyla Scanlon. And my Substack is kyla.substack.com.
Is there anything else you want to talk about that you're doing right now, or are we done?
Yeah, so I work at On Deck, and if you're interested in joining one of our fellowships, I highly recommend that you check it out. It's beondeck.com, and happy to answer any questions about that as well.
Hey, you know what? This is my show. Take 2 minutes and tell everyone what On Deck is, because I'm going to be speaking in that at some point.
Yeah, so On Deck is building also, the Stanford, or also they're building the Stanford of the internet. So we have a series of different fellowships that people can apply for. Right now, I'm working on the On Deck Investing Fellowship, so a 10-week program focused on personal finance as well as investment analysis and research. But we also have Product Management Fellowship, Customer Sales Fellowship. We have a Founders Fellowship, so if you're a founder, we have an Angel Investing Fellowship. So just a ton of different ways to create community around learning.
Kyla, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to have you back if you have time. Everybody, that's it. We're wrapping it up. Thanks again to E-Trade and the CME Group for allowing us to do this. Thank you for watching. Remember, the replay is going right up. So if you missed the beginning of this, Scott Bauer wants to buy an NVIDIA put spread. Jim Iorio gave you a call condor that he likes in the S&P. Mike Arnold gave you 3 full trades. Nautilus, he gave you Applied Materials, which is on his watch list. And then I don't remember the other one right now, so we'll come back to that. And then Kyla Scanlon, all kinds of information. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next Market Think Tank. Don't forget, Jim Iorio, Futures Edge on Friday. That's going to be at 3:30 Eastern time. Cheers, everybody.